Happy 2025, everyone. Welcome to the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller. Happy to have you along here today. A busy day. We have Drake basketball to get to, both men and women's side of things, college football playoff chaos, and great games yesterday, a few blowouts that were unexpected. And then we have football later today with Notre Dame and Georgia. So we'll get to all that, but first, some housekeeping. Thank you again for joining us. 2025, it's going to be our year of Media Row. We have logos already set. We showed you guys that in our last show on Monday. We have Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that getting all set up at the end of this week. So by next week, that will be all set. I will make sure to push it and try to get it out there as much as possible on our social media, which you can follow me on Twitter at Justin_C Miller. You can follow Media Row on Twitter at Media Row Pod. Follow us on YouTube where you can watch the videos and highlights on at Media Row Pod. And then on TikTok, you can follow me at Justin Miller on air. So really excited for today. Of course, happy 2025. Drake falls to UIC. Women's basketball home at UIC, which I will be at later tonight. Ohio State dominates in college football playoffs, Notre Dame, Georgia preview, and much more. Let's get to it. So starting off, Drake men's basketball. Tough one to watch and a tough way to start the new year. Definitely not what I think fans were expecting to see. Definitely not what Coach McCollum wanted to see coming out of the new year and in your third game of Missouri Valley Conference play. But it basically came down to how Drake just couldn't get away with what they did against Valpo on the road against the Flames. The Flames win by 4, 74-70. And while Sturts had an amazing game, career game, 30 points, career high, 12 assists, which is a career high, outside of Cam Manyout, there was no one else to really help Sturts. And Sam Brief, the broadcaster on ESPN Plus, made a great point. He's saying while Sturts is amazing and it's great to watch, teams are going to get more film on you as the season goes along and are going to be able to change up their defense in ways that are going to attack your strengths. And right now, Drake on offense, in that game, it really kind of pointed out how one-dimensional at times Drake can be. When Mascari isn't hitting shots, he only made one shot, 1 of 5. When Abreu is kind of slow, he had 9 points, but got most of them kind of in the final few minutes. But other than that, there wasn't much help. Cam Manyout had a great game. Great bounce back game. After going 1 of 5 at home against Belmont and kind of just had a tough game. Didn't look like himself. Came out and looked like his best self against UIC. 13 points, 12 rebounds, 8 of those rebounds being on the offensive glass, and shot 6 of 10. So while he was trying to help out Sturts, just no one else on the starting lineup could really help out. 14 points from the starters outside of Cam and Bennett. That is going to be really hard to win a lot of games in the Valley. And they've showed that they can do it against Valpo and against a few teams in the Charleston Classic. There was times where it was only one guy. But it's a big concern. And then McCollum having these guys play for 34 to 40 minutes is all good, but you just worry about what happens if there's foul trouble. And what happens now as we hit the month of January where you're playing 2 times a week. You don't have these weird 6-day breaks in between games. So that was the main concern from the offensive side, and I think what a lot of people saw in that game was it was Bennett, Sturts, and then really not a whole lot of help. And I'm confident McCollum, he watched the same game all of us did, and he's a smarter basketball mind than all of us combined. But he saw the same thing. I'm interested to see on Sunday when they go up against Murray State how he will try to get Abreu started early. Mascari is such a fun player to watch when he's on. That Kansas State game when he started off, whatever it was, 5 of 5, 6 of 6, he is such a good player and a veteran player. But it seems like it's really hard for him to get into a rhythm. He's very inconsistent. One game he goes off for 20 points. The next game he'll go off for 3. And it'll be interesting to see what strategies McCollum has lined up against Murray State where he can get ball screens going to get Mascari open or get Abreu open. Manyao, again, great game from him. And it was just an uncharacteristic game from Drake. Maybe not in that sense of Bennett being the go-to guy. That is what we have seen all year long. But even with Bennett's career game, he had a few odd turnovers, and the team as a whole, 12 turnovers by the Drake Bulldogs. And UIC just ran with it, took advantage of it. And there was one early in the game, I wish I knew the time and the score, but very early in the first half where Bennett Sturtz, he wasn't even getting, it was kind of a light full court press by the Flames, and he tried to chuck it down to Abreu and completely missed him. And it was odd turnovers like that all game long. UIC guarded the paint really well. As Drake knows, they like to do those ball screen pick and rolls where you try to get the alley-oop. And with the size advantage that we'll get to in a second that UIC had, they utilized that greatly and were able to block those balls in the paint, were able to tip them, just cause these uncharacteristic turnovers by Drake. 12 turnovers, 5th time this season the Bulldogs have led in a game where led in turnovers in a game. So just uncharacteristic. And shout out to UIC. They came in at home. It was not a packed Flames crowd by any means. I think there was more Drake fans than UIC fans in that small arena. It holds about 8,000, I think is what I looked up and saw. But in that arena, it was all Bulldog. At least that's what came across on TV. And it didn't bother them. That backcourt of UIC came out with some fire, pun intended. The guards, 48 combined points. And then, like we wanted to get to, the size advantage. Drake just could not hold Siani and Scoball at all in the paint. Those two, 16 points combined. And in the first half, it was clear the guards for the Flames were just trying to get it into Scoball and Siani. Those were two guys that were very physical and just had the size advantage on the glass, on defense, causing awkward shots, forcing Sturtz to take really difficult shots that he ended up making, just showing how great of an all-around player Sturtz is. But those two big men really made it hard for Drake's offense of, Drake's not an inside-out offense. They're an inside offense. They really like driving into the paint and going for those alley-oops, those inside bounce passes inside the paint to Travion Banks, Cam Manyao, Abreu, anyone who's cutting. Backdoor is a lethal weapon for Drake. But with the size advantage of Siani and Scoball, Drake just couldn't get into a rhythm, couldn't get it done. And that's a tough loss. It's a loss that Drake shouldn't have. UIC's a good team, and they have good guards, but I still full-heartedly believe Drake's a better team than UIC. They just came out sluggish, too many turnovers that we don't normally see. And Steve Prohm is a guy over at Murray State who likes to build a starting lineup that likes to run. So if you turn over the ball, while Drake has been okay in that position, Murray State will make you pay, if not worse, than UIC did. So on Sunday at 2 o'clock, Drake gets their revenge, I guess, gets an opportunity to get back on the floor and showcase what they are. 12-1, still a great start. Just now you're getting into conference play, and we're now seeing, why the MVC is shaping out how it is. It's anyone's league. And a lot of us, I think, thought that going into the season because of how many coaches and how many players left the league. But you have Drake now tied in 4th with a 1-1 or 2-1 Missouri Valley Conference record. Bradley winning a big one on the road against Indiana State. Both teams going in with a 2-0 record at Indiana State. And Duke Dean for Bradley coming in with a huge layup as time was just about to expire. The go-ahead layup to win the game for Bradley against Indiana State. Those two teams play again in 2 weeks, which will be awesome in Bradley. So you have Bradley at 3-0, leading the league, tied with UNI, who is 3-0, which we've mentioned on the show countless times. Ben Jacobson. That dude could have 8 losses in the non-conference, and then you blink and it's conference play, and that dude has his team as a top 3 Missouri Valley Conference opponent. UNI is always scary come this time of the year. And I think it's a credit to who they schedule in the non-conference. I mean, they played North Carolina. They always play really difficult teams at the start of the year. And I think Jacobson likes it because he knows in the Missouri Valley, it's really rare to get a 2-bid league into the March Madness tournament. And the Missouri Valley used to be really good at being able to get 2 teams in. But, I mean, Indiana State last year not getting in really shined a light on how difficult it is because Indiana State deserved to be in the NCAA tournament last year, despite losing to Drake in the conference championship. That team was loaded and was so balanced on offense and defense. They could have made a run, and instead you put in Virginia, who loses in the first 4. It just, that one pains me as a Valley fan because while I'm a Drake Bulldog fan, I love watching that Indiana State Bradley game was awesome. It's always fun to see how UNI is doing because, late January, Drake plays UNI at home. And those are always great atmospheres and great games. And it just sucks to see that this is now no longer a 2-bid conference. So right now, it's anyone's league. Plenty of games to be played. But at the same time, it goes fast. So while Drake loses to UIC, a game that you think you should have won, you better clean it up fast because 2 losses, if you lose to Murray State, you're going to be climbing up a steep hill going into late January where you play Bradley at Bradley next week on Wednesday. You play UNI at the end of the year. So Drake falls to UIC 74-70. Drake now 12-1 overall, plays Murray State at 2 on Sunday. We'll be there, so make sure to follow along on social media for all coaches' interviews, player interviews, highlights, thoughts throughout the game. But tough one. That one's tough to swallow. But things were better after that loss because turnover, and you watch Ohio State just dominate Oregon in a game that I did not see that coming at all. Not saying I didn't think it was going to be a high-scoring game because you have 2 offenses that have been elite, but I did not see Oregon. I think it's more of a shock, not Ohio State winning and their offense playing as good, despite me earlier last week saying how I don't know which Ohio State's team is going to show up. Usually that would be the shocking factor. But Oregon, a team that has been so consistent, just didn't show up. They looked confused on offense. You have Gabriel. I mean, I think the ESPN halftime show at Desmond Howard, he explained it great he's saying Gabriel looks confused by what Ohio State's doing defensively. And there's a pressure aspect when you get down 14-0, then you're trying to force things. But man, I would get up. Oregon would be ready to start their drive. I'd get up to grab a quick snack in the kitchen, come back out. Ohio State has the ball. Very not how I thought the game would go at all. And I'm watching the game with my dad, and he goes, when you do this podcast, do you have a concern of, you picked Oregon, and while you're an Ohio State fan, now you have to go on and you talk about how great Ohio State played. And I'm not concerned about that because what I'm trying to do here, while I'm a Drake fan, while I'm a Seahawks fan, an Ohio State fan, Cubs fan come baseball season, I'm going to try to tell it honestly. I'm going to try to not just be biased and say every game that, man, Seattle's going to win this. Man, Drake's going to win this. Ohio State, best team out there. No, I'm going to watch the games, and what I see is how I'm going to try to explain it. Ohio State, before Tennessee losing to Michigan, I don't know how you could sit there and be really comfortable with them going on this run to the semifinals. I thought they would beat Tennessee. They did. Going into Oregon, I thought it was going to be a tough battle, but my gut, watching these two teams play the whole year, I'm going with the team that has been consistent, and that was Oregon. But Ohio State, Chip Kelly, has learned that he has an outstanding offense. And I guess better late than never, but it's weird how passing to your two future NFL wide receivers works. Jeremiah Smith, a true freshman, taunting Oregon before the game, saying, man, if it's man-to-man, I'm burning you guys, basically. And he did. The true freshman goes out there 187 yards and 2 touchdowns, just with ease over a really good Oregon defense, a defense that has held teams and stars just as good as Jeremiah Smith all season long. But 4 touchdowns over 40-plus yards. First time Ohio State has done that since 2000. And now you see Chip Kelly not trying to force the run, and how good that's been helping Ohio State. When you're doing those quick passes, like every Ohio State fan and every college football fan has been screaming for Chip Kelly to do, you open lanes for Henderson and Judkins. Henderson yesterday goes off for 2 touchdowns, 94 yards, one of them 66 yards down the sideline. Chip Kelly has finally learned how to call offensive plays for this loaded roster. And I know people will say, well, congrats, your $20 million roster beat Oregon. Oregon has a $23 million roster, everyone. Every big team that is lucky enough to be in the spot of the Ohio States, Alabamas, Georgias, they're going to have high-priced rosters. And you can groan at that whatever you want, but that's just the way college football is going. But better late than never. And I know I had a friend ask me over New Year's Eve, he's like, if Ohio State goes on a run and wins the national title, are you upset because you lost to Michigan? Hell no. And all it will do is if Ohio State wins the championship, yeah, it's going to be annoying hearing Michigan fans say, oh, couldn't beat a bad Michigan team at home. Yeah, that's going to suck. But a championship's a championship. Give me the national title. Give me the national title. So better late than never from Chip Kelly to learn how to call offensive plays with a loaded roster. And then also, just wow from the Ohio State defense. A defensive line that has struggled to get pressure on quarterbacks against teams that have a pulse. I mean, they were really good against, the Western Michigans and all that, but against Penn State, they kind of struggled to get pressure on the quarterback without blitzing. And against Oregon, really struggled to get pressure on Gabriel in the earlier match of the season. And I've been asking for Ohio State to add blitzers with Downs and Ransom and all those guys. Try to get more guys in the backfield to put pressure on Gabriel. They did it with their 4-man front. 8 sacks, 13 tackle for losses, all with holding calls being non-existent in that game. Sawyer, every other play, was getting his neck cranked, but refs didn't see it, I guess. Go back and watch the film. His neck is literally getting cranked back. But they did it with their 4-man front, and that was a huge game changer, a major game changer, because then it puts Gabriel under pressure with the 3 high safeties Ohio State has. It took longer amounts of time for the wide receivers to break out of their routes, and Gabriel didn't have time to spare. because you had Sawyer coming in there and all those big guys on the defensive line. This is the Ohio State team I've been waiting to see all year long. And like I said with Chip Kelly, there's no better time to figure it out until right now with the college football playoffs. So Ohio State 41-21 over Oregon. Just an absolute beating. Wasn't close from the get-go. Oregon never led. I kind of feel bad for landing in Oregon because, man, that's a team I wanted to see go a little deeper. Wish Ohio State didn't have to play them in the Rose Bowl. It would have been fun to see them play in the semifinals or championship. But just an absolute beating. And Ryan Day, to the Ryan Day haters, you're silent now. And I will be honest, you can go back and watch. After that Michigan loss, I was one of those people that was sitting there like, he better have a good college football playoffs. He is lucky this is the first year of the 12-team expansion. He's lucky because that Michigan loss would have gotten him fired if it was a 4-team playoff, in my mind. And I was one of those people. He needed to have a good run. If he lost to Tennessee in the first round ugly at home, it was probably time to do a coaching search because just something's not right. But, man, he has coached his tail off. Him and Chip Kelly have made the adjustments we've all been asking for. They have a tough test, though. Texas coming up next Friday in the CFP semifinals. And Texas struggled against Arizona State and almost blew that game. And that targeting call, it's targeting. It is 100% targeting. But at the same time, I think Arizona State should have gotten the ball. There should have been a penalty flag. They should have gotten down the field further and kicked the field goal. Arizona State should have gotten that call. That's what I'm saying now. But in the future, I think the NCAA needs to look into trying to do what college basketball does with the flagrant foul and having multiple levels. Targeting is not always black and white. And that one he leads with the crown and hits him in the helmet, but it's not egregious. It is not. He is trying to make a play, going full speed, hits him in the helmet. Yes, that's a penalty, but he shouldn't, if they called it, he shouldn't get kicked out of the first half next week against Ohio State because it is a clean targeting tackle. It's the best way I can put it. He's not going out there. He doesn't completely lead with the crown of the helmet, doesn't lunge towards the head. He just hits him high, and that's a flag, and Arizona State should have gotten it. But I'm just saying if they called it, I don't think he should have gotten kicked out in the first half of the next game against Ohio State. I think the NCAA needs to look at that. And maybe with Arizona State, right after the game, they sent in that letter to the NCAA to basically relook at that call. And maybe that's what it takes as we're trying to figure out the bumps in this 12-team playoff. This is something that during the regular season, a lot of people had issues with. Targeting is a really hard call right now to figure out. It's like, what's a catch too? And I think the easy solution, in my mind, is you call it like flagrants in college basketball, where you have multiple levels. But Texas wins against Arizona State in a shootout in a game that Texas, scored the touchdown and made it 24-8 in the fourth quarter with about 10 minutes left or so. And I turned the TV over. We're watching the rest of the Drake game. Turned it over, thought the game was done. Arizona State hasn't been able to do anything all day long. And when Texas scored those first two huge touchdowns, whatever it was to play 66 yards or something crazy like that, I thought that was game. But credit to Arizona State for battling back, getting the safeties, getting a few fumbles, turnovers, scoring the ball, And then, man, Texas, you were sweating with those 2 missed field goals multiple times to end the game in regulation and couldn't get it done. And then a huge interception thrown by Arizona State towards the end to lock up the game for Texas. But that Ohio State-Texas game, because those are two teams that I think have been very similar this season. They've had moments where you go, they are the best team in college football. And they have moments where you go, man, can they beat anyone if they make the playoffs? And now both of them are in the semis going up against each other. That one's going to be exciting. Both teams have a lot of film to watch. Good, bad, and ugly from what they saw over the weekend. So, Ohio State plays Texas next Friday. Keeping with the college football talk, because we have a game today happening in about 3 hours as Notre Dame, number 7, takes on number 2 Georgia. Game got pushed, of course, after the attacks in New Orleans, which, if anyone's watching this that was affected by it, and just everyone watching, thoughts and prayers. Really ugly scene and disgusting. I mean, one day into the new year, and that happens. It's gut-wrenching. And now we play a game today, and this is one of those cool things sports can do, in my opinion, is during tough moments, you can forget about it for a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, and watch a game. The Boston Bombings, and you have the Red Sox go on their tear in the World Series and everything like that. You have cool moments like that. And I remember the NFL Network did a cool documentary about, after the 9/11 attacks, of the games being played the following week. And you have the Patriots and Giants playing, I think, or Patriots and Jets. And you just have, you get reminded of why we love sports and how it's a distraction from sometimes the harsh realities of life. And really excited for this one, because I think this is going to be a great game. Let's just, get into the stats of Georgia and Notre Dame. Notre Dame favored by 1.5, but a lot of money going on to the Georgia side of things. Georgia money line is even right now. No Carson Beck as the starting quarterback. Gunnar Stockton is QB1 for the Bulldogs, and we haven't seen a lot of Stockton. He did okay in the SEC title game, 72 yards, an interception against Texas in the title game. But he has 2 elite running backs in the backfield to help him out, with Frazier, 634 yards, 8 touchdowns this season, and ETN, 571 yards, 9 touchdowns so far this season, along with 7 wide receivers who are over 200 yards. You have Smith with 750, Lovett 571, Bell with 433 yards. And then I always like looking at the tight ends when backup quarterbacks get in, because tight ends can be used so often as just quick dump downs, easy completions. And that's what I think Kirby Smart is going to set up with Gunnar early, is get him into a rhythm, get those easy completions. So don't be surprised if you see ETN or Frazier with high receptions in the early part of the game. And also go to the tight end in Lawson Lucky, who has been a great option for Beck all year long, 348 yards receiving for him. But while that's kind of maybe some people's concern, is how will Gunnar Stockton play? This is kind of his first real start against a really talented Notre Dame team, a Notre Dame defense that is missing a few key players and would be even scarier, but still have been able to go through that adversity and get to this point of the season. But I think this game is all about the battle in the trenches. My main concern is the Bulldogs' offensive line. 21 sacks allowed this season, which is the 48th highest in the country, or 48th lowest in the country. They have Notre Dame, who's only allowed 17 sacks. So that offensive line is really strong. So it comes down to the trenches. Which defensive line can get to the quarterback faster? Notre Dame has had 33 sacks this year, Georgia 36 sacks. So the battle of the trenches are fairly even. And I think that's what it comes down to. And with a backup quarterback, my gut kind of wants to lean towards Notre Dame winning this game. But with the talent Georgia has, the strength and size they have on both sides of the ball, that Notre Dame matches up well with, but experience is experience. 5 wins, 1 loss in the college football playoffs for Kirby Smart. This is the first time Marcus Smart has made it to this point. He beat Indiana at home in the first round of the playoffs for his first college football playoff win. Georgia wins this, and I'm leaning on Kirby Smart and his experience, but Georgia wins this, and they have to keep it a low-scoring game. They beat Texas, and that was a low-scoring SEC game. And if it gets to be a shootout with Notre Dame, I just don't know with a backup quarterback if Georgia can survive that. But I like their size on the defensive line, and 5-1 is 5-1. Give me Kirby Smart, his experience as a head coach. He's been here before, been here, done that, has probably had moments like this as a head coach where you are forced into a tough situation with a backup quarterback, and he has handled that well too. So give me Kirby Smart, give me Georgia in a low-scoring game. 45.5 is the over-under. I would almost take the under too. So I think Georgia wins, advances to play Penn State, Penn State, gifted for being bad, has been gifted for being bad. The Nittany Lions lose in the Big Ten title game, lose to Ohio State earlier in the season, and you get the easiest route to the semifinals. And I think Notre Dame or Georgia, whoever wins that one, is beating Penn State, in my opinion. But you can't always control what happens, and Penn State's been winning games that they're getting put into, but in my opinion, I think they've been given a easy route for losing their biggest games of the year. So, my pick tonight is Georgia. But so write down in the comments what your thoughts are on my thoughts of the game. I will be able to watch a little bit of the game, but we'll be at the Knapp Center in Des Moines tonight, 6 o'clock tip. Drake women's basketball tips off against UIC. Bulldogs have won 5 straight, 7-5 overall, 3-1 in the Knapp Center. UIC, they've won 2 straight, 4-6 record, but not a lot of balance in that roster. Only one player in Malika Williams, who's averaging 13 points. She's the only one averaging double figures. So it should be a good one. I like the Drake Bulldogs' opportunities tonight to really they just have great depth. I mean, when you have players like Ava Hawthorne on the bench, you have Katie Dennebeer, who has just every week is the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Week. You have Anna Miller, Courtney Becker. You have all this experience at home against a UIC team that is still trying to figure out its identity. I like the Drake Bulldogs, but make sure to follow us on social media. I'll have interviews with Coach Pullman after the game that will get put up, and then just my thoughts throughout the game too as the ball is tipped at 6 o'clock. Thank you guys again so much. 2025 off and running. We had a lot to get to at college football playoffs, Ohio State, Drake, Missouri Valley as a whole. Can't wait. Tomorrow we'll recap both big games of the Drake women's basketball as well as Notre Dame and Georgia, and get you ready for the weekend, which is another big weekend for Drake Bulldog fans and just the Missouri Valley as a whole. So thank you again so much. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Twitter at Media Row Pod. Follow me at Justin_C Miller. Follow me on TikTok at Justin Miller on air, and follow us on YouTube at Media Row Pod for every day, Monday through Friday. We're going to be here talking sports, talking Valley, and talking about anything. So really glad to have you all here in 2025. Let's continue to grow this thing, and excited to see where this takes off to. I will see you guys tomorrow.